Now, how's that? So I hope you don't have a bunch of background noise from fans and things going on. You guys, let me know how the audio is always. Let me give a quick hello to everybody. Musk, Elon, Sheila, Digger, Prince Solomon. Hi, everybody. How are you? Hope everyone's doing great this afternoon. So we're going to be doing something a little bit different than we normally do. You probably gathered that already. If I sound a little hoarse, it's because I've been working in the sun for 3 days and kind of got a little dry. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be going over papers that were assembled early on by William Cooper. He wrote the what is it? A Pale Horse, Beyond a Pale Horse, or I can't remember the book series offhand right now. I was more into the group that William was working with back at that time. So in 1988 and 1989, in that area, I was doing a lot of this real enigmatic research and stuff in ancient cultures and off-worlders and things like that, but from a different perspective than the UFO crowd, let's say. I mean, you guys know how I am. It was all field work on the ground, what we were finding and things like that. And so I'm gonna go ahead and probably turn on a pick or two while we're doing this too. So doing those kind of work, we ran across all these ancient sites and all this stuff, and I ended up working with groups early on that were, Behold a Pale Horse. That's right. Thank you, Prince Solomon. So but I was working with groups who were kind of above and beyond on the scale of things, and always have, and it's just it's a divine intervention, I guess, God's will. But that's where I ended up, and so I was at this time made a conduit to William Cooper's writings as he was doing them and assembling them. And the reason what was happening is he was going through his attorney, and his attorney was distributing these to a select group of people. I was only aware of 5, and I was one of those 5 at the time. And so anyway, what I'm going to show you today is a small representation, although it's very detailed. It's actually cut up in a way that everybody can glean this, but there's a lot of different things mentioned, and it's pretty impressive, but it still represents a pretty small fraction of the total that I was either got to see or was given to personally hold. So these are the actual paper documents themselves from they begin in 1988 and go through 1989, and it's pretty outstanding. So with everything we see today in the in the media world, and what's going on in the disclosure and what they say disclosure, we're going to call this all soft disclosure, let's say. What's going on with them is it's pretty, you'd say, unbelievable, but those of us who were made aware early and who have watched the evolution of this throughout the decades now, and were made aware of plans for them to actually, ways to hide this and everything, and what to do in a contingency if it was released before they were ready, and why and what they might be doing when they do release it. And William Cooper actually came out to reveal all these details in their plan all the way from back then. And unfortunately, not too long after he got his material out there, that he was killed, and like we all know, basically he was murdered for the information, because he held a lot more than that. Now what we have is not the book per se, but this is what was coming out at those times when all the information was being compiled by William Cooper. Now he also compiled and delivered the Krill papers. Still to this day, no one's ever figured out where the origin is, but he brings us up because they do describe in detail what he knows, and he knows to be true, and he knew to be true, I guess, at the time. And it's probably some of the most comprehensive and laid out, most direct information you'll hear. And I have not read it in many, many years, but I figured now I would pull it out because this is the time when it seems relevant. So now the picture in front of you is that's a glyph, a shot that we found in our explorations, and it just to show you this, just because there's a physicality to all this. It's not just some lights in the sky and something that started 300 years ago in some report or anything like that. These glyphs are many hundreds, if not thousands of years old. By the lichen stuff, probably thousands. And at this area, it's pretty plain to see what we're looking at here as far as a craft and like lightning and antenna and the whole 9 yards and stars and things. So, and then a one single character or face in the sky, that's like the solar face. And so when we see things like this and then we know the information we know, you can imagine over knowing this 30 years, my point of view and perspective, as all this other information has come out, I want to relate this reality to you about this. And, you know, even more impressive, I think, is this. And this is a massive stone slab, and it's in the form of a triangle, and it's probably a door. You can see the monuments that are put here. Now, the weight of that slab, because the way it's sitting, is pinching that monolithic rock right here. So in the middle of the frame. And I can show you here. Let's see, we'll do our little red circle. So, but this monolithic rock right here, and then this little plinth. And if you look right in the center of the circle, you'll see a black triangle. And that was all assembled not hundreds of years ago, but thousands of years ago. And this is kind of what we're talking about. This is the gravity of the realization. If you look just beyond that, there's a triangle at the back of the door. And what there is there's a shaft into this thing. Now, this is physically what we call the off-worlders, or, you know, even the Gov guys I know, that's how they refer to them as well, not EBEs or any of that. They just call them off-worlders. And they have been doing work on and in our planet for eons. I mean, as old as people have been around, maybe even predating the human race. And their origin is debated, but some of the information in here says it's a star and a planet and system called Zeta Reticuli. And it just describes, you know, some of this, I'm not sure if these documents will show today, but some of them go over the biology of what we call the grays and how they ingest fluid as food and things like that and secrete it out membranes of the body. So I want to say to everybody real quick, who's your Squatch? Good to see you. This is a super, super informal deal today. And so there may be cats, drama, there could be anything pop in on us. So I have to excuse that. And we can just go ahead and kind of start getting into this thing. Yeah, let me go through my shots here. We'll bring up our auxiliary cam. Come on, cat, you can't get in there. Go on, you're gonna knock that over. She's about to knock over all our paperwork and stuff here. Come on, go on. Okay, I got a cat that's half blind, and it's funny and it's not funny at the same time. Poor girl, but she gets around. Okay, so this is an MJ-12 dock operation majority. Now, I've had to rig this up the best I can to be able to do this live, because this is the actual paperwork. As you can see, there's my hand. So this is going to get into it a little bit, but this is Operation Majority, final release. There will be no corrections to this file. Copyright 1989 by Milton William Cooper. All rights reserved. You have my permission to quote from this information in press releases, periodicals, and speeches. Inclusion in any other media requires my express written permission. This file contained the absolute information regarding the alien presence on Earth and the U.S. government's involvement with the aliens. This file contains only the information as I saw it, and only my information. It does not contain any information from any other source. It was necessary for me to issue this information previous to this release in a manner which would deceive the government until someone was able to independently confirm my identity, my employment, my service record, my intelligence background, the identity of my person which I gave information to in 1972, his acknowledgement of the information when it was given to him, that the information is correct, that I have not seen him since 1974, and that I have not communicated with him in any form since 1976. This was necessary because this file is my death warrant if MJ-12 continues to operate in a manner consistent with its history. All in the last paragraph has been independently verified by two people of no connection with each other. I will only list for obvious reasons. And there's the two guys. So, and his address, or the one guy there. So, the original information that I first released was not much different than what you will find here. Only some names were different, and just enough, I hope, to convince MJ12 and Magi that I was not a threat, long enough to have independent verification of the facts before I risked death. I wish to make it absolutely clear that I do not consider myself a hero. I believe that most of you would do the same thing if you knew the truth. I gave an oath that I would uphold and protect the Constitution of the United States of America, and I take that oath very seriously. Now, you can tell from the context in this paperwork that it's not light-hearted on his side. Matter of fact, he understood at this time that he was basically signing his own death warrant to reveal this stuff. Let's go on. We are left with, last time it said, I am doing no more than I did when I fought in Vietnam. I'm doing my duty. Please make copies of this file and send it to your congressman. MJ12 Doc, page 2. Your senator to the attorney of the United States and to the Supreme Court. Send it to everyone you know. Attach copies of the Bill English file and John Lear's file. Send anything else you may have which tends to support this information. And you can note as we go through this that there you will see references to words and phrases and names and things you've probably seen before. And you may gain a new understanding of the context where they really exist. We'll check over here, see if we have any questions real quick. Yeah, it is. Hey, what's up, Ranger Ron? Great to see you. Oh, you're never late, bro. You're always on time. Todd Wyndham, good to see you. Thank you very much for coming. How do I feel safe? Well, I mean, look how long I've said on this. And what I know is I think this stuff is out there maybe online. Now, I don't know of anyone who probably knows anyone who has an actual copy of it in paper form that was, the original copies. But I think I've seen transcriptions, at least out of part of it. I'm not sure if everything, I know everything I have is not out there yet. But some of this, maybe the Krill papers especially. Now, this part, I'm not really sure. This you guys are getting to see, but I mean, based on what they're doing right now, they're already out there and have their information engine going. I shouldn't represent a true threat. I'm sure they can deal with whatever contingency to whatever we show here. They've had plenty of time, and now they want to show everyone, so I'm just going to help them and do our part, right? So this is a lot of whistleblowers coming out right now. Looks like a good time to read this material. Well, that's what I thought, Digger Dog. So let's go on. I, Milton William Cooper, 1311 Highland, his address and phone number, do solemnly swear that the information contained in this file is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. I swear that I saw this information in 1972 in the performance of my duties as a member of the intelligence briefing team of the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet as a petty officer in the U.S. Navy. I swear that I underwent hypnotic regression in order to make information as accurate as possible. I swear that I can take a lie detector test and offer any test by any reputable person choosing in order to confirm this information. I swear that I can and will undergo hypnotic regression conducted by any reputable qualified doctor and reputable persons choosing in order to confirm this information. I will not, however, submit to any test or hypnosis by anyone who's never been connected with the government or who has ever been connected with the government, blah, 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 for obvious reasons. The following is a brief listing of that I personally saw in Note 1972 and does not contain any input from any other source whatsoever. Now you'll get to start getting into the operations and the projects and the names of these things, what they're all about. Majesty was listed as the code word for President of the United States for communications concerning this information. Operation Majority is the name of the operations, responsible for every aspect and project consequence of alien presence on Earth. Grudge contains 16 volumes of documented information collected from the beginning of the United States investigation of unidentified flying objects and UFOs and unidentified alien craft IAC. The project was funded by the CIA, confidential funds, non-appropriated, and money from the illicit drug trade. Participation in the illegal drug trade was justified in that it would identify and eliminate the weak elements of our society. The purpose and project of Grudge was to collect all scientific, technological, medical, and technical information from UFO IAC sightings and contacts with alien life forms. This orderly file of collected information has been used has been used to advance the United States space program. And we have a cat visitor again. There we go. You guys gotta love this, huh? No, don't get on the keyboard. You'll cancel the stream. She can't really see, so I guess it's not her fault, but this is interesting. Come on, honey. Go on. MJ-12 is the name of the secret group President Dwight D. Eisenhower commissioned a secret society known as the Jason Society. Jason Scholars, to sift through all the facts, evidence, technology, and deception to find the truth. The alien question, the society was made up of 32 of the most prominent men in the country. 1972, and the top 12 members were designated, as we go on. Designated MJ-12. MJ-12 has total control of everything. They are designated by the code J1, J2, J3, etc., all the way through the members of the Jason Society. The director of the CIA was appointed J1 and is the director of MJ-12. MJ-12 is responsible only to the president. Now, that changes. So this is at the time when everything was going on, because that's who was involved and that's who was doing these things. Today, I guarantee you that's not the way it's flying. It's more the other way around, actually. MJ-12 runs most of the world's illegal drug trade. This was done to hide funding and thus keep secret from Congress and the people of the United States. It was justified in that it would identify and eliminate the weak elements of our society. The cost of funding in the Alien Connections Project is higher than anything you can imagine. MJ-12 assassinated President Kennedy when he informed them he was going to tell the public all facts of the alien presence. He was killed by a Secret Service agent driving his car, and it is plainly visible in the film held from public view. A secret meeting place was constructed for MJ-12 in Maryland, and it was described as being accessible only by air. It contains full living, recreational and other facilities for MJ-12 and the Jason Society. It's codenamed the Country Club. Only those persons with top secret magic security clearance are allowed to go there. Okay, so now we'll go into some of the names of some of the operations. Let's check out our chat here. Sweet. Okay. Magi is the majority agency for joint intelligence. All information, disinformation, and intelligence is gathered and evaluated by this agency. This agency is responsible for all disinformation and operates in conjunction with the CIA, NSA, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. This is a very powerful organization, and all alien projects are under its control. Magi is responsible only to MJ-12. Sigma is the project which first established communications with the aliens and is still responsible for communications. Plato is the project responsible for diplomatic relations with the aliens. This project secured a formal treaty, illegal under the Constitution, with the aliens. The terms were that the aliens would give us technology. In return, we agreed to keep their presence on Earth a secret, not to interfere in any way with their actions and allow them to abduct humans and animals. The aliens agreed to furnish MJ-12 with a list of abductees on a periodic basis. You guys may have heard of the Yellow Book. Magic is the security classification and clearance for all alien-connected material, projects, and information. Magic means Magi controlled. Aquarius is a project which compiled a history of the alien presence and their interaction with Homo sapiens upon this planet for the last 25,000 years, and culminating with the Basque people who live in the mountains country and the border of France, Spain, and the Syrians. Garnet is the project responsible for control of all information documents regarding subject and accountability of information in these documents. Pluto is a project to evaluate all UFO IAC information. Pertaining to space technology. Pounce is the project formed to recover all downed craft and aliens. Okay, so now we just went over everything, you know, mentioning the recent disclosures and things like that that's going on out there. And what we have to think about is, you know, he says, well, I can't reveal the name of the group or the project. Well, you're going to see that this is compartmentalized. Each aspect has a project or a group or department. And he mentions that as well. So that's why we feel kind of safe to come out and kind of let this open. I mean, this information is 1988, 1989. So you have to think about that, how long this stuff's been going on. And so he may not have mentioned the name, but you'll see these names mentioned throughout this. Like it says, Pounce. So Pounce is the project formed to recover all downed craft and aliens. And that's what he said he couldn't reveal the name of, or he didn't know the name of the project, that they had told him the name and he had never heard it before. Well, that would be the name that he's regarding, basically, or the real name that it would be. Let's move on. These are good. Redlight is the project. I'm not sure why we're so sideways here. Let me see if I get the paper set up in there a little better. Oop, don't fall out. Okay, how's that? Redlight is the project to test fly recovered alien craft. It is conducted at Area 51, Dreamland, Nevada. It was aided when the aliens gave us craft and helped us fly them. The initial project was somewhat successful in that we flew recovered craft, but it was blew up in the air and pilots were killed. The project was suspended at the time until aliens agreed to help us. Now, I can kind of verify that in several ways. So Project Redlight was the craft that were involved in that were using mercury, spinning at 250,000 RPM. Well, it was actually superheated into a plasma that spun at 250,000 RPM. And that would give a time dilation effect above the craft, and then they could alter that effect around the craft, and that would result in propulsion. We've seen cases in UFOs and stuff where material has been ejected, and it looks like aluminum magnesium type material. And so this is actually has to do with those, because it's a tempering material that they add into that plasma, and when it starts to go critical, they have to be able to dump some of the material. And so that's why that actually occurred, and it occurred through a certain year series when they were testing these craft, and one did explode. And I've had talked to one of my relatives and then a couple other people who during those years either were truck driving or whatever through around that area, and I don't mean within 10 miles, I mean 40-50 miles away, and even more, but the whole sky lit up, and then it ionized the sky for a while, and it stayed illuminated, so over that entire region of Nevada. And so I think that was in 76, I think, is when I was told that event actually took place, and then that program was halted at that point. Snowbird was established as a cover for Project Redlight. Several flying saucer craft were built using conventional technology. They were unveiled to the press and flown in front of the press. The purpose was to explain accidental sightings of disclosure of Redlight as having been the Snowbird craft. So that would be part of the things we see on Discovery and things like this, where they design craft that were going to go 3,000 miles an hour and things like this, and then they never got off the ground, blah, 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 blah. And what people were seeing were some of these craft. Luna is the alien base on the far side of the moon. It was seen and filmed by the Apollo astronauts, a base in mining operation using very large machines and very large alien craft, which have been described in various sighting reports as motherships, are based there. NRO is the National Reconnaissance Organization based at Fort Carlson, Colorado. It is responsible for security of all alien craft connected projects. Now, there's also another, we've dealt with another group that is FBI, and they're black security guys doing all this crazy stuff, and they're called Gaddis team, and they're not mentioned in here. But Delta is the designation for the specific arm of the NRO, which is especially trained and tasked with security of these projects. The so-called Delta Force has been labeled by the government in media reports as anti-terrorist special combat unit. It apparently has other covert responsibility. This would also seem to tie in all too neatly with the contingency plans listed below. Joshua is a project to develop low-frequency pulse sound generating weapon. It was said this weapon would be effective against the alien craft and beam weapons. It is known that a special experimental project was launched some years ago under the auspices of the U.S. Navy to investigate a special low-frequency pulse sound and radio wave system. The antenna for such a system consisted of buried cables that extended radially for several hundred miles in all directions from the generator site. The listed purpose of these experiments was to develop a system of communications that could be used with our submarines worldwide that could neither be detected by anyone nor having the specific equipment nor jammed by any conventional source known to current technology. This may or not have been the cover story. It is equally interesting to note that while this national secret was being printed in certain popular monthly mechanical science magazines, articles appeared in several of the more serious scientific journals concerning experiments with a sound wave generating weapon that operates in the 4 to 13 hertz range. Now, it's interesting because we hear them now talking about a big neutrino contraption that's sitting in Antarctica that is, and it's part of this UFO disclosure deal, and this what they call a neutrino detector, but the thing can actually be used to manipulate parts of the Earth's EM field and other things like that. It's shield, generate earthquakes and things like that. So it's odd that what we're actually looking at here is the real description of the systems as he best understood them in 1988. And now we're hearing kind of the drop on them where the details are a little changed. That weapon that could be fatal to enemy troops, perhaps reducing them quite literally to a massive quivering jelly. So what they're talking about is demolecularization. Pretty scary stuff. What do we have? Okay, Sheila, that's good. Janet Fitzgerald, I didn't see your question there. So they're not just the Krill papers, but they're the testimony directly from William Cooper, who wrote the book Behold a Pale Horse, and he was basically what you would call the original disclosure guy. He gave his life doing this, and nothing here has ever been in any way proven to be untrue. Matter of fact, it's 30 years later before we start to even get word of most of this stuff that validates it. So Excalibur is a weapon to destroy the alien underground bases. Now, some of you may have watched. There's tech in here that you've heard of that has come out, but at this time, nobody realized we had it. Try to move over here. So Excalibur, it is to be a missile capable of penetrating 1,000 meters of tufa or hard-packed soil such as that found in New Mexico with no operational damage. Now, this is a weapon that was capable of taking out alien bases. And notice they mentioned it's designed to use in the tufa of New Mexico, basically. So Missile apogee not to exceed 30,000 feet AGL, and impact must not deviate in excess of 50 meters from designated target. The device will carry a 1 megaton nuclear warhead. Aliens. There were 4 types of aliens mentioned in the papers. A large-nosed gray, with whom we have the treaty. The gray reported in abducted cases that works for the large-nosed gray. A blonde, human-like, described as the Nordic, and a red-haired, human-like type called the Orange. The home planets of the aliens are described as being a star in the constellation of Orion, Barnard's Star, and Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2. I cannot remember even under hypnosis which aliens belong to which star. Okay, so we know that the grays basically are attributed to Zeta Reticuli, just through other information. EBE is the name or designation given to the live alien captured in 1949 Roswell crash. He died in captivity. Krill, here we go, or KRLL or CRLL, or pronounced Krill. Krill was the hostage left with us at the first Holloman landing as a pledge that the aliens would carry out their part of the basic agreement reached during that meeting. Krill gave us the foundation of the Yellow Book, which was completed by the guests at the later date. Krill became sick and was nursed by Dr. G. Mendoza, who became the expert on alien biology and medicine. Krill later died. His information was disseminated under the pseudonym O.H. Krill or Krill. Guests were aliens for humans who gave us the balance of the Yellow Book. At the time I saw the information, there were only 3 left alive. They were called ALFs, alien life forms. Religion. The aliens claimed to have created Homo sapiens through hybridization. Now, notice he says the aliens claim. And this is an interesting concept because as you see that we always think, I don't know what we think. We think aliens aren't sinister or anything like that, that's a human trait, just solely human. And it's not. It just depends on who they are and what they are. I mean, there's probably 40 different races visiting the planet or beings. I would imagine a very, very small number, but these things have been here for a long, long time. And they are the things, I guess, that have infiltrated into humanity probably for tens of thousands of years, and for a reason we may get into here later. If not, I'll mention it. Okay. Alien bases exist in the Four Corners area of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Nevada. 6 bases were described in the 1972 papers, all on Indian reservations and all in the Four Corners area. The base near Dulce was one of them. Now, the base near Dulce is called Baca Location Number 1, and there's actually a Baca Location Number 2, but you've never heard of it. And yeah, me, and there's a lot of other people, so it's not just me. I mean, taking me out won't help, that know where Baca Location Number 2 is. So, and it's not far from where I'm at right now, actually. It's pretty close. Murder. The document stated that the many military and government personnel had been terminated, murdered, executed without due process of law when they had attempted to reveal the secret of the aliens, the Jason Society, and the MJ-12. Note, any adult human being who lives in today's society who still does not believe that our government would commit cold-blooded murder in order to preserve the idea of acceptable status quo, that a person should be... Let's see if I can keep this stuff together long enough to do this. Should be placed in a secured, well-padded cell and not allowed to play with pointed, sharp objects. He and she is both intellectually and morally brain dead. As an example, does any sane person who really believes that Karen Silkwood died in an auto accident? Now, see, these names are not relevant to us anymore. And that's because they were relevant to specific people. And the names are here in case people want to go and begin to research and dig into any of this. But we're not going to recognize these names. These names were basically scrubbed from public opinion, the public system. So. Craft recoveries. The document stated that many craft had been recovered, the early ones from Roswell, Aztec, Roswell, again, Texas, Mexico, and other places. And let's check before I get too far in. Okay, still not too many questions, so that's good. General Doolittle made a prediction that one day we would have to reckon with the aliens, and the document stated that it appeared that General Doolittle was correct. Abductions were occurring long before 1972, the document stated. That humans and animals were being abducted and or mutilated. Many vanished without a trace. They were taking sperm and ova samples, tissue, performed surgical operations, implanted surgical device from 40 to 18 microns in size near the optic nerve in the brain, and all attempts to remove it resulted in the death of the patient. The document estimated 1 in every 40 people had been implanted. This implant was said to give the aliens total control of that human. Let's try and move it over a little more without it falling here. Come on. Contingencies planned should the information become public or should the aliens attempt takeover. The plan is called for public announcement that a terrorist group had entered the United States with an atomic weapon. It would be announced that the terrorists planned to detonate the weapon in a major city. Martial law would be declared, and all persons with implants would be rounded up along with the dissidents who would be placed into concentration camps. The press, radio, and TV would be nationalized and controlled. Anyone attempting to resist would be arrested and or killed. Contingency planned to contain or delay the release of the information. This plan called for the use of Majestic 12 as a disinformation ploy to delay and confuse the release of information should anyone get close to the truth. The name Majestic 12, was selected because of the similarity of spelling and similarity to MJ12. It was designed to confuse memory and to result in fruitless search of material which did not exist. Source material contained in the documents which I saw. The source material was an ONI counterintelligence operation against MJ12 in order for the Navy to find out the truth of what was really going on. The Navy at the time, or at least the Navy that I worked for, was not a participant in any of this. The different services of the government conduct this type of operation against each other all the time. The result of this operation was that the Navy cut themselves in for a piece of the action technology and control of some projects. Yeah, Digger Dog. Yeah, it does sound like what's happening now. And there's a reason for that, because everything that's happening now isn't an accident. It's been happening basically the entire time. So it's all been part of a long-running plan, and that's what he's kind of telling us about here. And I got to remove a cat again. Go on, honey. Nowhere for you to go. Okay. As you can see, this file is only different from my oops, grab the wrong one. Just a minute here, I gotta grab my window. Okay. Thanks you guys for reminding this informal thing. So my previous file, only some names were scrambled previously to confuse the government long enough for someone to verify what I've said is truth. I have added information to this file that puts my life in absolute danger. I've sent a copy of this file to. Now that's where we come in. So there was, I'll read it, but there was, I don't think the names are here, but there was 5 of us that I knew of that were receiving this info. To people all over the country, and will continue to do so. Please get this file to as many hands you can. Maybe protect me, but I doubt it. So that was what we were kind of supposed to do, was pass this stuff on and keep passing it on. And not much of it ever actually got passed on because he didn't last all that long. It says, history will be the judge of me and this information. I have no fear of that judgment. I swear this information is true and correct to the best of my knowledge. I wish to thank all those people who have aided me in reaching this point and their patience and understanding, I owe you all more than I could ever repay. Finally, it does not matter who is right and who is wrong, or if a project name is wrong place. It does matter who is working for who and what is really what. It should be obvious by now that something sinister and terribly wrong is going on involving the government and the UFO phenomenon. We must all band together and expose it now. I have done my part in the best manner that I could. I can add nothing else except my testimony in Congress or in a court of law that what I saw and have written in this file is true and that I saw it. Everything in my previous file that does not conflict with this file is true and correct to the best of my knowledge, and some of this from its resources or from its sources and research. You may combine the files to get the entire picture. Throw out only that information which conflicts and that contained in this file. There will be no further additions. My corrections to this information, either now or in the future. My file is complete and stands to be judged by history. Sometimes in the future, the exact papers that I saw will surface, and you all see the exact information contained within them. Milton William Cooper. Note, when originally downloaded, this file was somewhat hashed by electronic telephone interference. It was reconstructed word for word and reformatted to facilitate easy reading to the best of my knowledge and ability. Not one word has been changed in the original text. However, from time to time, I've added comments from my own observation and knowledge. These comments have been placed in brackets to indicate the comments observation of my own. No original author document. Mr. William Cooper is in no way responsible for these comments or observations. And then the initials of that party. So this is what we were getting into. So it starts getting into a little more detailed information about what was going on with Krill. This stuff, I got it from the same source. As a matter of fact, that this was being released by Mr. Cooper through these channels. So this is some of what he was talking about when the information that would follow. So, but this is a brief summary of description. The Krill papers seemingly came out of nowhere and have stirred up small hornet's nest of speculation. Who is O.H. Krill? Is this information correct? And parts of the text correct, parts incorrect. Where did the papers come from? I'm going to answer some of those questions in this file. When the aliens landed at Holloman Air Force Base in the 60s, a basic communications was established between the United States government and the aliens. During this communication, a basic agreement was reached, which was the precursor for the formal treaty and the diplomatic relations which followed. The aliens left a hostage with the United States as a pledge of fulfillment of their part of the agreement. The name of that hostage was Krill, and was sometimes spelled KRYL. Excuse me. I will refer to him as Krill, as this was the spelling used in the Majesty documents which I saw. Now remember what he said about the Majesty documents versus MJ12. This hostage furnished much information about the aliens, which became the foundation of the Yellow Book that was completed from information obtained from the guests at a later date, in order that this information could be circulated and discussed amongst the military and scientific community as a pseudonym which coined as a code for information which originated from Krill. The name Krill was Krill. The initials OH stand for the original hostage. So, all information thus circulated from the source Krill was said to be authored by O.H. Krill. The information was usually of scientifically or seemingly occult nature and was sanitized so that no inference of an alien race or culture occurred. This was done so that feedback and recommendations could be gleaned from those experts who were not privy to the secret. It was also used to pass technology from the aliens into the defense contracting community and the U.S. space program. Krill became ill after a few years and almost died, but was nursed by a physician who eventually became the government expert on alien medicine and pathology. My information that Krill did at some later date die. The pseudonym continued to be used for the same purpose for many years and may or may not be in use at this time. The Krill papers must have been authored by someone in the government or military who knew this information, because the author O.H. Krill is an obvious takeoff on O.H. Krill, thus on KRLL. I do not know who the author is, and I do not know if the material is directly from Krill or not, but it is It is apparent that whoever O.H. Krill may be, he did know the story of KRLL because William Cooper knew. So this is what we're talking about. So you can read the Krill papers and this and that, and what he's telling you is he's validating because he knew. In my opinion, the origin of the material will most probably be the object of much speculation. I cannot comment on the material which covers information that I have never seen before. However, I can say that much of it is correct and agrees with the information I have already released. I never saw the Krill papers before in my life until the SISOP of Paranat, RHO, called my attention to them in a file on that board. This occurred only a few days before Christmas, and I uploaded them to Ted Markley as soon as I could. He informed me, however, that he had already obtained them from another source. Here you go. These are the Krill papers. Confidential. A situation report on our acquisition of advanced technology and interaction with alien cultures, January 1988, by O.H. Krill. Abstract. Throughout the 40-year period when UFO have been actively observed in our civilization, a lot of data has been gathered, data which has often pointed to aspects of the phenomena that have been suppressed. As a result of that suppression and the compartmentalization of the information, our culture has been fragmented into several levels of reality which both coexist and oppose each other. Part of our culture not or will not believe in the existence of other species. Part of our culture acknowledges their existence or the possibility of their existence. Part of our culture is actually interacting with the other species. These simultaneous realities contribute to the condition of extreme confusion which we find ourselves. Get out of there, cat. Come on, no. Sorry, guys. Get out of my cup, you weirdo. No, get out of here, too. Go on. There goes another one. We're being strafed. They're just like UFOs. Get out of here. Research into UFOs follows a similar pattern. Some view the matter in a completely empirical perspective. Others search for patterns and functional relationships in events. Still, others go out and ask for the right questions at the right time and get answers. Some of those answers that have appeared are, to some people, hey, don't stick on there. Are to some people quite disturbing and fantastic. All in all, we are dealing with new concepts in physics, new concepts in psychology, and the gradually growing awareness that we are not only not alone here, but we have never been alone here. As if that were enough, it turns out that factions of our society have known this and apparently been interacting with some of these alien species for quite a while. The bottom line is that all along humanity has been led down a false path, a path that has been plagued by layer upon layer of conspiracies and disinformation. The technological knowledge and absolute power have been the motives on the human side. Survival has been the motive on the alien side, or at least as far as the predominant alien visitors are concerned. The intent of this paper is to bring much of the details regarding this into the open. You are not being asked to believe it, but to consider it in the light of what has happened, what is happening, and maybe developing right under our very noses. If you find you cannot stomach such thoughts or you cannot deal with it, read no further. Well, in our case, you can watch no further. I'm just reading some of the comments here. Yeah, these are all real good comments. If you guys have any direct questions, you can ask them, and it would help just ask them in caps, and then I can pick them out real quick, and I'll address them as we go. Yeah, and the man-made craft, that's the thing, is we've been building them right alongside. We were going to the moon in the 50s. We were in Mars by, I think, the late 50s. So, I mean, they patented the gravitational force, which is a time dilation machine, basically, and they patented that in 52. I think by 53 they patented the inertial dampening system. It works on a similar deal that puts you in a kernel of yourself, so you can't be affected by outside forces. That stuff was all patented. So, and then in 54, 55, we were on the moon, shortly after we were on Mars. So, yeah, so when we talk about what man-made craft, and we've been seeing our craft for 50 years, just about. It is quite evident, or it should be, that the UFO situation is both complex and dangerous. The UFO problem is a multi-institutional, multi-dimensional phenomenon. We have established the following and have a basis in fact. Craft from all other worlds have crashed on Earth. Alien craft are both ultra-dimensional sources and sources within this dimension. Now that's interesting because I'm not going to get into how that works, but ultra-dimensional would be outside this dimension or inside this dimension, not in a number of them. So because you could say within dimensions, the universe remains the same. Nothing's changed. It's all relative to something close to you or that's moving with you or by you. And if you're moving too fast to be here, to occupy any space and time, then you're ultra dimensional. So you could actually do that. You could just exist at that speed, and you're not in time. You're not occupying any time. No time is passing. So early U.S. government efforts at acquiring alien technology were successful. The U.S. government has had live alien hostages at some point in time. The government has conducted alien autopsies on alien cadavers. U.S. intelligence agencies, security agencies, and public agencies are involved in the cover-up of facts pertaining to the situation. People have been and are currently abducted, mutilated, murdered, and kidnapped as a result of the UFO situation. There is a current active alien presence on this planet among us that controls different elements of our society. Alien forces maintain bases on Earth and on the moon. The U.S. government has had a working relationship with alien forces for some time, with the express purpose on gaining technology and gravitational propulsion, beam weaponry, and mind control. Millions of cattle have been killed in the process of acquiring biologic materials. Both aliens and the U.S. government are responsible for mutilations, but for different reasons. And that's interesting. We can get into that too some point. We live in a multi-dimensional universe world that is overlapped and visited by entities from other dimensions. Many of these entities are hostile. Many are not hostile. The basis of our genetic development and religious lies in intervention by non-terrestrial and terrestrial forces. Actual technology far exceeds that perceived by the public. The United States space program is a cover operation that exists for public relations purposes. People are being actively killed in order to suppress the facts about the situation. The CIA and the NSA are involved so deeply that exposure would cause collapse of their overt structure. Facts indicate alien overt presence within 5 to 10 years. Our civilization is one of, now, overt presence is, you'll have to just go ahead and decide what you think they mean by that themselves. That can be interpreted. Our civilization is one of many that have existed in the last billion years. You will probably have more conclusions to see, just read on. Now, remember, like William Cooper, who knew, said, he's not sure if every detail in here is accurate as far as this guy's got it all right, but at least this is what this guy is aware of. General chronology. In the middle of 1963, a series of livestock attacks occurred in Haskell County, Texas. In a typical case, an Angus bull was found with its throat slashed and a saucer-sized wound in its stomach. The citizenry attributed the attacks to a wild beast of some sort, a vanishing varmint. As it continued its furtive forays through the Haskell County outback, the bloodluster assumed somewhat more mythic proportions, and a new name is destined to endure: the Haskell Rascal. Throughout the following decade, there would be sporadic reports of similar attacks on livestock. These livestock were occasionally described as mutilations. The most prominent of these infrequent reports was the mutilation death of Snippy, the horse in southern Colorado in 1967, accompanied by area UFO sightings and the Condon Committee investigation and worldwide press coverage. It was in 1973 that the modern animal mutilation wave can be said to have begun in earnest. That year is generally thought of as the year of the last concerted UFO flap. although there may be reason to question that contention given the events of 2 years later. In 1973 and 1974, the majority of the classic mutilation reports originated in the United States. In 1975, an unprecedented onslaught spread across the western two-thirds of the United States. Mutilation reports peaked in that year, accompanied by accounts of UFOs and unidentified helicopters. In 1978, the attacks increased. By 1979, numerous livestock mutilations were occurring in Canada, primarily in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Attacks in the United States leveled off. In 1980, there was an increase in activity in the United States. Mutilations have been reported less frequently since that year. Though this may be due in part to the increased reluctance to report mutilations on part of the ranchers and farmers, the mutilations still continue. Over 10,000 animals have died in the United States, although the mutilations have been occurring worldwide. The same circumstances are always present. General observation. Any investigation which intends to probe systematic occurrence of the mutilation attacks upon livestock and other animals must include within its purview certain factors which may or may not be directly related to the acts of mutilation themselves. These mutilations, the killing and furtive removal of external or internal parts, have been directed at literally thousands of animals, primarily livestock, since the 1960s. The surgery on those animals is primarily conducted with uncanny precision due to the use of highly sophisticated implements and techniques. The numbing and persistent regularity of the mutilations and the seemingly casual disposal of the useless carcasses all hint at extreme confidence, even arrogance, of the mutilators. And that's true. You think about it. It is an arrogance which appears to be justified by the freedom and impunity which these acts have been carried out. It's like they know nobody can do anything about it. They just don't even care. The pertinence of a specific element of the problem is shortly revealed in the course of any thorough investigation into the mutilations. I refer to the appearance of the unmarked and otherwise unidentified helicopters within a spatial and temporal proximity of animal mutilation sites. The occurrence of the two has been persistent enough to supersede coincidence. The mystery helicopters are almost always without identifying markings, or markings may appear to have been painted over or covered with something. The helicopters frequently are reported flying at abnormal, unsafe, or illegal altitudes. They may shy away if witnesses or law officers try to approach. Now, and I can say that's totally true, because we've dealt with black helicopters and gray helicopters and ones that look like they were all covered in grease and washed down and oxidized and things like this that have tried to knock our equipment over, our tents down, and that have done physical damage to major excavation sites we've been with weird weapons. So I know these things, this stuff exists anyway. There are several accounts of aggressive behavior on the part of the helicopter occupants, with witnesses chased, buzzed, hovered over, or even fired upon. At times, these choppers appear very near mutilation sites, even hovering over pastures where mutilated carcasses are later found. They may be observed shortly before or after mutilations occur, or within days of a mutilation. The intention here is merely to stress many helicopters element as part of the issue which deserves scrutiny. The idea of mystery helicopters did not develop currently with the animal mutilations themselves. Such helicopters, unmarked, flying at low levels, soundless, or sounding like helicopters, have been reported for years and have been linked to an even more widespread phenomenon, the phantom fixed-wing aircraft. The helicopters themselves have been seen in areas where UFOs were reported. In many countries, in some of these more interesting accounts, the mystery helicopters with all the internet stuff, it's not used to dealing with paperwork. were seen with UFOs, and shortly after the UFOs were sighted, the most apt case I think of, but certainly not the most isolated, is a case described by Virgil Armstrong in his lecture on What NASA Didn't Tell Us About the Moon. He discusses helicopters and UFOs in general. Armstrong describes a friend of his that had invented a special camera arrangement with the idea that it would increase the chances of getting good pictures of UFOs. The camera was mounted on a gun stock along with a laser. The idea was to fire the laser at the UFO if one appeared, and hopefully the UFO would come to halt, enabling him to take quality pictures. Not too long after they were set up in the desert, a UFO did in fact appear, and they fired the laser at the disc, stopped in a hovering mode. They took quite a few good pictures of it. Shortly thereafter, the disc flew away. Within a few minutes, they heard the unmistakable sound of helicopters coming their way. The helicopters landed strategically around their group, and out of the choppers came a group of Black Beret, which are Strategic Air Force Security Forces. The commander of the Berets walked up to the group and said, "What are you doing here?" "Obviously, we were photographing flying objects. We just saw a flying saucer, and we got some very good pictures of it." The commander was then asked the leader of the group if he knew where he was. The group leader replied, "No." The commander then said, "We suggest you get out of here now." The group leader then asked, "What right do you have to tell us to get out of here? Is this government land?" The commander of the Black Berets replied, "Indeed it is, and it's Andrews Air Force Base, and if you're not out of here in 10 minutes, you're under arrest." With that, the Berets removed the film from the camera, and the group left. Not only does this illustrate one kind of instance where UFOs are seen in relationship to helicopters, but it also illustrates the fact that either some of the discs are ours, or we have a military government relationships with those who fly them. The helicopters mentioned above are not the mystery ones, but were United States military ones. Another case of military helicopters in the United States owned discs come from the book UFO Crash at Aztec by Wendell Stevens. In the book, he relates the incident where an Indian was backpacking in the mountains of vicinity of Area 51 Groom Lake on the Nellis Air Force Base range north of Las Vegas. He heard approaching helicopters and hid out of sight. The helicopters were broadcasting a warning over a public address system for anyone in the area to show themselves because they were going to conduct a dangerous military test. The Indian maintained his hidden posture, and the helicopters flew overhead and back down toward Groom Lake facility. Minutes later, helicopters were seen flying up the canyon with a black disc flying between them and slightly above them. They flew overhead, and then the helicopters turned around and flew back towards the base, followed shortly afterwards by the disc. The individual's name and how to contact him for further details is given in the book, The Mystery Choppers. Situations involving the mystery helicopters appear to be a little more insidious. A good example is an event which occurred in Madison County, Montana between June and October of 1976. 22 confirmed cattle mutilations had occurred during that period, and they were accompanied by reports throughout the county of silent, unmarked jet black helicopters, flashing or steady, anomalous lights in the air and near the ground, unmarked fixed-wing aircraft, and white vans in remote, previously inaccessible areas. Toward the latter part of this period, in early autumn of 1976, a hunter from Bozeman, Montana was out alone around 3 p.m. one day in the Red Mountain area near Norris. He watched as a black helicopter without markings flew overhead and disappeared below a small hill. The curious hunter climbed to the top of the hill. There was a black chopper, a Bell Jet Ranger, he thought, on the ground, the engine still running. Several men had apparently exited from the craft and were walking up the hill toward the observer. As the hunter advanced toward the seven, he waved and shouted congenial greetings. It was then that he realized they were something about the men. They were all Oriental. They had slanted eyes and olive skin and were jabbering among themselves in some indecipherable language. They wore everyday clothes, not uniforms. Suddenly they began to return to the helicopter. The hunter, still waving and shouting friendly greetings, started after them. The Orientals quickened their pace, and when the hunter approached within 5 or 6 feet, they broke into a dead run, crowded into the chopper, and took off. Now that's interesting, because who knows, he might have just scared the hell out of a bunch of Chinese tourists, right? I mean, In a documented mystery helicopter wave in England, accounts place Oriental-appearing occupants as an unidentified chopper, slant-eyed olive-skinned Oriental-seeming occupants that have been staple heart of the UFO periphery of UFO accounts for years. Significant numbers of the infamous Men in Black have a similar appearance, but very often they are seen as pale and gaunt men who are sensitive to light. I'm going to take a real quick look. Why are the cattle mutilations only happening in the West? Now, before I cancel this live stream, I will tell you why they are where they are and what's going on with that. Once we get a little deeper through this, then I'll go ahead and break that out, if it's not mentioned in here. Prince Solomon, question regarding the 3D projection of the helicopters. So I think they actually touch base on some of that in here as well. So that will come up, I believe. Yeah, and they do happen all over the world, which is the mutilations, but they're in each region, not everywhere in the world. They happen all over the world in diverse locations, but not everywhere. So there's certainly clusters of areas where they do happen. Like Cheryl mentioned, you know, the people here, right here in this valley, are well aware of this stuff. They found cows that were done that way and then dropped from so high they splatted like a ketchup sack on the ground. But you go in other places in the Midwest and back east and things, and it's unheard of. It's like, what are you talking about? So there's certainly regional aspects, and there is a good reason for that. I guess we'll go ahead and continue. In Stigmata number 5, Fall-Winter 1978, Tom Adams outlined the most predominant speculative explanations accounting for the mutilation helicopter link, including the following. And then Solomon, I think this is where we get to you. The helicopters are themselves UFOs, disguised to appear as terrestrial craft. The choppers originate from within the U.S. government mutilator and directly involved with conducting actual mutilations. The helicopters are government military and not involved in the mutilations, but are investigating them. The helicopters are government military, and they know about the identity and the motives of the mutilators by their presence and are trying to divert attention to the possibility of involvement by the military. The answer, as far as Tom Adams is concerned, could be seen as a combination of above explanations. There has also been speculation that they are involved in biological experiments with chemical or biological warfare or geobotanical pursuit. Oops, get that. Try to even this out a little bit. Of petroleum and mineral deposits, on one occasion, an Army standard type scarpula was found at a mutilation site. Since the discs have been... Did we skip a page? I don't think so. Let's see how we do. Let me take a look real quick. Okay. Sorry about that. So, geobotanical pursuit of petroleum and mineral deposits. On one occasion, an Army standard type scalpel was found at a mutilation site. Since the discs have been mostly involved with the mutilations, it is thought that this was a diversionary event. These events, or the discussions of them, is just a precursor to actual revelations of what is behind the mutilations. Alien acquisition of biologic materials for their own use. Now, that's what we're looking at here, is that one. I'm going to just look. Now, sorry about that. I'm having a black screen flashing here. Okay. To discuss this in logical and segmental manner, we must review what has been really happening right under our noses. Direct interaction with extraterrestrial biological entities. EBEs. To discuss that, however, we must attempt to start the beginning with what we know to be true. The saga begins. Yeah, and Nana Ann, I'll definitely keep this video up. Sometimes I like to recut them and cut the front off, basically the dead time. But it'll be up. Yeah, I'll probably just leave this edition. It seemingly all began thousands of years ago, but for the purpose of this discussion, let's start with some events that we're all familiar with. In 1947, 2 years after we set off the first nuclear explosion that our current civilization detonated, came the Mantle episode. We had the first recorded incident of the military confrontation with extraterrestrials that resulted in the death of our military pilot, or a military pilot. It is quite evident now that our government did not know quite how to handle the situation. In 1952, the nation's capital was overthrown by a series of discs. It was this event which led to the involvement of the United States security forces, CIA, NSA, DIA, FBI, to try to keep the situation under control until they could understand what was happening during this period. The government established a working group known as Majestic 12, or MJ-12. The original members were Admiral Roscoe H. Hellencotter, Dr. Vannevar Bush, Secretary James Forrestal, General Nathan P. Twining, General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, and Dr. Detlev Bonk, Dr. Jerome Hunsaker, Mr. Sidney W. Sawyers, Mr. Gordon Gray, and Donald Menzel, General Robert M. Montague, and Dr. Lloyd V. Berkner. The MJ Group has been continuously existing group since it was created, with new members replacing others that die. For example, when Secretary Forrestal, upset at seeing the United States sold out in World War II, he wound up being sent to the Naval Hospital for emotional strain. Before relatives could get him, he jumped out the 16-story window. Most persons close to him considered his suicide contrived. When Forrestal died, he was replaced by General Walter B. Smith. Forrestal, now that's another one. So he didn't just jump out his window. You wouldn't believe what that. They tried to kill him a couple times, and it didn't work. And they finally, I think once he shot himself with his own gun in the hospital or something when his gun was at home somehow, and he was in the hospital from some other thing, and supposedly. So you have to go through that. That's pretty amazing how many times they tried to kill him before they got him. In December of 1947, Project Sign was created to acquire as much information as possible about the UFOs, their performance characteristics, and their purpose. In order to preserve security, liaison between Project Sign and MJ-12 was limited to 2 individuals within the Intelligence Division of Air Materiel Command, whose role it was to pass along certain types of information through channels. Project Sign evolved into Project Grudge on December 1948. Project Grudge had an over-civilian counterpart named Project Blue Book, with which we are all familiar. Only safe reports were passed on to Blue Book. In 1949, MJ-12 evolved an initial plan of contingency called MJ 1949 OP-78. That was to make allowance for public disclosure of some data should the necessity present itself. Now, 1948, that's really interesting. And all you treasure hunters out there, 1948 should be a big deal to you, because that's when we acquired most of this territory where all of these things are, all the treasures, the ancient stuff from the ancient cultures, the alien bases, and all these other things are in the area. They're concentrated, I should say, or something is special regarding them in the areas they took over in 1948. Once it gets too heavy. You guys get to read ahead every time I do this, huh? Majestic 12 was originally organized by General George C. Marshall in July 1947 to study the Roswell Magdalena UFO crash and recovery of debris. Admiral Hillenkotter, director of the CIA from May 1, 1947 until September 1950, decided to activate the Robertson Panel, which was designed to monitor civilian UFO study groups that were appearing all over the country. He also joined NICAP in 1956 and was chosen as a member of its board of directors. It was from his position that he was able to act as the MJ-12 mole. Along with his team and other covert experts, they were able to steer NICAP in any direction they wanted to go. With the flying saucer program under complete control of MJ-12 and with the physical evidence hidden away, General Marshall felt more at ease with this very bizarre situation. These men and their successors have most successfully kept most of the public fooled for 39 years, including much of the Western world, by setting up false experts and throwing their influence behind them to make their plan work with considerable success until now. Within 6 months of the Roswell crash on 2nd July 1947 and the finding of another crashed UFO at San Agustin Flats near Magdalena, New Mexico on 3rd July 1947, a great deal of reorganization of agencies and shuffling of people took place. The main thrust behind the original security lid and the very reason for its construction was the analysis and attempted duplication of the technologies of the discs. That activity is headed up by the following groups: the Research and Development Board, the Air Force Research and Development, the Office of Naval Research, CIA Office of Scientific Intelligence, NSA Office of Scientific Intelligence. No single one of these groups was supposed to know the whole story. Each group was to know only parts that MJ-12 allowed them to know. MJ-12 also operates through various civilian intelligence and investigative groups. The CIA and the FBI are manipulated by MJ-12 to carry out their purposes. The NSA was created in the first place to protect the secret and recovered flying discs, and eventually got complete control over all communications and intelligence. This control allows NSA to monitor any individual through mail, telephone, telexes, telegrams, and through online computers, monitoring private and personal communications as they chose. In fact, the present-day NSA is in the current main extension of MJ-12 pertaining to the flying saucer program. Vast amounts of disinformation are spread throughout the UFO research field. Any witnesses to any aspect of the program had their lives monitored in every detail, for each has signed security oath. For people who have worked in the program, including military members, breaking that oath could have any kind of the following consequences: a verbal warning accompanied by the review of the security oath, I would suppose at minimum. A stronger warning, sometimes accompanied by a browbeating and intimidation, psychologically working on an individual to bring a depression that will lead to suicide, murder of the person made to appear as suicide or accident, strange or sudden accidents, always fatal, confidential and special detention centers, or confinement in insane asylums where they are treated by mind control and deprogramming techniques. Individuals are released charged with personalities, identities, and altered memories. Bringing the individual into the inside where he is employed and works for them, and where he can be watched. This is usually in closed facilities with little contact with the outside world. Underground facilities are usually the usual place for this. Any individual who they perceive to be too close to the truth will be treated in the same manner. MJ-12 to go to any length to preserve and protect ultimate secret. As we will see later, the characteristics of what this ultimate secret would turn out to be would change drastically, for it was something even MJ-12 could not predict. Actual contact with alien groups. How the actual contact between the government and aliens was initially made is not known. Well, it kind of is known, but so not this time, I guess. Not by him. But the government was made aware that it could be done by a civilian using the right equipment. Dr. Pell Benowitz, civilian scientist, did so using computer equipment and informed the government he had done so, not realizing that by then in 1983 the government was in truth as deep into dealing with the aliens as his communications them revealed. Dr. Benowitz lives in Manzano Weapons Storage Area near Albuquerque, New Mexico. He observed UFOs constantly over the area and initially decided they were a threat to the installation. He proceeded to figure out a coding system and was successful in communicating with the aliens that were flying over that area. What he found out after initial contacts with the aliens years ago, we agreed to provide to them bases underground in the United States in return for certain technological secrets, which the aliens would reveal to us. The aliens would also be allowed to carry out their certain operations, abductions, mutilations without intervention. The original contact between the government and the extraterrestrial biologic entities, who are gray in color and 3.5 to 4.5 feet high, herein referred to as the Greys, was achieved between 1947 and 1951. We knew that the Greys were instrumental in performing the mutilations of animals and some humans, and that they were using the glandular substances derived from these materials for food, absorbed through the skin, to clone more Greys in their underground laboratories. The government was also aware that the Greys performed some of the abductions to secure genetic materials. The government insisted that the Greys provide them with a list that would be presented to the National Security Council. Now, okay, so the biology of these guys, this may all be in here too, is that they have a fluid filtering membrane within what we would call our throat, that they don't ingest solids at all, fluids. And if you notice what I put together over all the years, this is my trip, is that they take colloidal tissue. They take tissues that generate fluid for the human body, or that deal with fluid for the human body, regardless what it is, nerve fluid, lymphatic fluid, glandular fluids. And they take the glands, they take these lymphatic glands and things with lymph nodes, they take the lips and things, tongue, eyes, and they're using this most likely to be cloning food sources. So because they ingest fluids, mammalian fluids primarily. I wouldn't think that's not limited to just the animal order and not humans as well. And down the line, I think I'll cover and open up a big part of another connection regarding products that are derived from human beings, basically. And even in our world today, there's very, very, one of the most expensive products that you could administer to another human are derived from humans that have to be pulled in a very horrific way, basically terror inspired. Some of you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, so what you'll also notice if you research the areas or in the mutilation hotspots, they only last usually for so long, then they quell down, and then they go to another region. But just before those start to happen, you'll usually see seismic events, and the seismic events usually start around 4, and they'll be in weird places. They'll be all by themselves. They'll do like a 4, big boom, that's it, and then there'll be a 3 within a day or two, and then a 2, and maybe one more smaller, and then they cease, and then the mutilations start in a region. And what those are, that's very similar to the way they do nuclear excavation. So they can use nuclear devices to detonate and take out a big hole, and then it's radioactive. You can dump another one and change that. You can glassify the hole and start to get rid of the radiation. You can do that in a couple of phases, and then it's ready to move into. And so I believe that they're constructing these bases either for them or they are doing it, and then they're gaining all this material to then install in that so they can generate food within that base structure for whichever population they're going to have in it. And so each time they do this, they would require a whole bunch of colloidal tissues to be gathered up, let's say, and these would then be what they would use to make their foods. So let's go on. These have never been, sorry, thanks for the patience. These have never been folded, so they're a little difficult to deal with. Through all of this, the government thought the Greys were basically tolerable creatures, although a bit distasteful. They presumed at first that it was not unreasonable to assume that the public would and could get used to their presence. Between 1966 and 1969, a plan was formulated to make the government aware of their existence over the succeeding 20 years. This time period would culminate with a series of documentaries that would explain the history and the intentions of the Greys. The Greys assured us that the real purpose of the abductions was for monitoring of our civilization, and that when we learned of the abductions were a lot more frequent and insidious than we were led to believe. Come on, cat. Oops. Sorry, Dopes. Let's see. The government became concerned. Their concern was also based on additional information regarding the purpose of the abductions. Insertion of a 3mm spherical biological monitoring device through the nasal cavity into the brain of the abductee, implementing subliminal post-hypnotic suggestions that would compel the abductee to perform some specific act at a time to be within the next 2 to 5 years. Now that's interesting when we see some of the acts that go on, isn't it? That just people just randomly all of a sudden go nuts and start doing something weird and then they even say, I don't know what I did. I don't remember. I was blacked out or I was whatever. This happens every once in a while. We have to wonder what triggers these people. And they tend to do it at specific times when it's maybe politically correct for one party or another. Genetic crossbreeding between the Greys and human beings. Insertion of discoid monitoring devices into the muscle tissue of the abductees. Presence of these has been verified by X-ray. By the time we had found out the truth about the intentions of the Greys, they intend to stay here and stay in control of our world, it was too late. We had already sold out humanity. Not that it would have made any difference because they were here doing what they were doing anyway. In 1983, a story was outlined by government sources that said that the Greys are responsible for our biological evolution through the manipulation of the DNA of already evolving primates on this planet. Various time intervals of DNA manipulation were specified for 25,000, 15,000, 5,000, 2,500 years ago. Originally, the government thought that the Greys meant us no harm, but today, in 1988, the picture that is emerging is exactly the opposite. The story now is one of great deception at several different levels. The Greys, Trojan horse-style manipulation and lying, which allied MJ-12 forces with them for decades ago, the government's disinformation of the subject of UFOs in order to perpetuate the agreement with the Greys free of public scrutiny, the lies of the abductees, the Greys, ongoing abduction of people and mutilation of animals in order to harvest enzymes, blood, and other tissues for their own survival needs, and a genetic blend of the Grey race and a tall Nordic race to enable Grey interface with humans to be done with greater ease. Information from a source at the Southwest Army Base reveals that these multiple levels of deception are true. It is also indicated that the goal of the SDI Star Wars is actually to follow through with an attack proposed by the Greys on the Nordics when they arrive in mass between now and 1992. This time is scheduled seems to be matched with post-hypnotic programming of many. And it's interesting because right about that time, 92, and then later again, there was what we would call a war in space, like photographed all around the sun. And then they put up the satellites that look at the sun from both sides. And there was another event like that where for a few weeks anyway, craft were seen basically taking out other giant craft around the sun. And we have to wonder if that's not part of what was going on at that point. Pages were always the toughest. Thanks for your patience, you guys. You can see this is a little deal here. This abductees for actions between the next 2 to 5 years. The same source sees the world dominated and controlled by the Greys in a very similar way that portrayed in the V television series. They are concerned only by their own survival agenda, and this agenda requires biological substances from other life forms of our planet. The apparent reasoning for the gray preoccupation with this is due to their lack of formal digestive tract and the fact that they absorb nutrients and excrete waste directly through the skin. The substances they require are mixed with hydrogen peroxide and painted on their skin, allowing for absorption of the required nutrients. It is consumed from this that some weaponry against them might be geared to this in this direction. Now, as with any information from any source, we have to look at it through a specific lens, and the lens is the same one that they use to code the information we have to use to decode it, called a key. And one of those ways is that they do this is, well, all information is spread in these ways. It's either 2/3 a lie or 2/3 a lie, 1/3 truth, or 2/3 truth, 1/3 lie. And so you have to be so when we read through all this stuff, that's what D.B. Cooper was talking about. He gives you basics that then either are true or untrue with all these details that many other people infer. And so they do ingest mammalian fluids, but other reports from more reputable known sources and stuff wouldn't say that they absorb those through the skin. Matter of fact, that they use an enzyme, and the enzyme is part of their health medium that they put on their skins. And without that, then I would assume that it's like a symbiotic trip, but it consumes the toxins. So there's logic to that as well, but instead of them mixing it with hydrogen peroxide to absorb it through their skin, it would be literally that they're ingesting mammalian fluids. They excrete the toxins through the skin. These toxins are basically consumed and cleaned by an enzyme that they add. It's like the way they clean themselves. So that's going to go ahead and conclude. This is end of part 1. And so that's 1 of 4. And what you see here is 2 of 4. And we're going to conclude this video on this, and then we're going to do another part because it'll just take too long to try to get through all these parts for sure. And you can see, you can get a little taste of what's going to come here. Now, these are, like I said, the KRYLL papers, and I'm going to be breaking out during this little series. I will be breaking out some other things, and that kind of start to tie all this into a whole different realm for most people, which would be it's going to touch into Bigfoot, treasure in ancient history, and a lot of other things. I mean, it's really gonna be instrumental to get a larger picture of kind of all the information that's going on. So with that, let's get to some questions and see what people have here for me. I went a long time without taking a look, so. Oh, we're not too bad. That's fresh. Are you asking me, do I trust the government? Well, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as the government. So a government is made up of a bunch of individual people. Do I trust all individual people? Absolutely not. Right? I mean, no one should trust every single person. That would be naive, and people make up the government. So absolutely, I don't trust parts of or portions of or certain individuals within that. Yeah, Nana Ann. Yeah, you have that right. That's one of the products. Now you have to think though, what would a race that ingests mammalian fluids, and is willing to do all kinds of sinister stuff, from control political movement to history to world perception, to infiltrate groups and religions and things over thousands of years to keep their own presence a secret. That's pretty sinister. So who knows? Wouldn't you think? I mean, it's highly possible that product in itself is an intoxicant to them. And when we talk about why has everyone got the fear response with the aliens, why is terror is something that they seem to almost go out of their way to terrify. They don't have to do everything in a terrifying manner. It's not the nature of anything just to be terrifying, Sure, overwhelming, mind-blowing, put you in shock, whatever it is. But the feeling of terror is an interesting concept that's universal. So, but that is what cranks up that product within the body. So if that's what they were taking, that's what they would need to do. Please. Oh, please. I can't remember. Let's see. Oh, Vaughn. Oh, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And, we're just pausing. Let's put it that way. I'm going to have to jump back in here. I might even jump back on tonight. Just during the day, I need to get a few things done. So if not, I'll do it again tomorrow. And then we'll get through these. And after this, there's other stuff. And after this, there's other stuff. So at first part of this whole thing we're doing here is basically just the Krill papers. And then we will go on. No, I wasn't Todd Wyndham. I wasn't one of the people, Krill instructor, but DB Cooper's attorney. So there was, like I said, with what I was working with and who I was in constant contact with, DB Cooper, and they were all kind of, there was a group of people who knew each other and who were working with each other. And it goes in everything from treasure to the alien thing to all of it, because it's all completely interrelated. The true history of the Native Americans of North America, and how they got there and what was going on that the history doesn't regard or tell you about. So yeah. But it was, so it wasn't an accident. So there were only 5 people selected. So vicariously DB Cooper, because I wasn't directly connected to him. It said Prince Solomon, dude, even if all the religions are wrong, made up, there still could be some sort of higher dimensional source that we all stem from that you could call a God. No, I believe in God completely. And this is all, I mean, and with even in the accepted Bible, except for maybe the new reversed international version, which should probably be tossed, but aliens are all through it, and monsters are all through it, and what we could call dinosaurs are in it, and everything else. The behemoth, just legs like tree trunks, and shook the ground like an earthquake when it walked. Even an elephant doesn't do that. And elephants were described. Here's an elephant, and here's what's called a behemoth. So, when we look at it that way, I think all this just validates God. And this is what God was describing. I mean, when we look at what they're talking about here, this is what's described. And when it says they'll be deceived by their pharmaci in Revelations, well, pharmaci is what? Those are the mixers of potions. Potions are medicines. Potions are not negative. Potions were any mixture to affect the human form, human body, positive or negative. So the mixers of those were called the pharmacists, the pharmaci. So a pharmacist, what's a pharmacist? So what are we doing? We're being deceived by the pharmaci, the mixers of medicines. That's the medical industry. So we just look what humanity just went through. There's your deceived by the medical industry. I mean, it's not hard to figure out that all this is actually connected. Because each time humanity's got to this point, certain beings, groups, or interests have been able to knock it back down. And because you can't let it get too high. I mean, even the Greek gods were quoted as saying, look down upon man. Soon they will be able to do even as we do as gods. And the decision was made to throw them down. So it's like that. So we are edging what we haven't been able to pull off before. That's why it's so important for all the people to have this greater understanding, because the spreading of that understanding is the only, you could say, weapon against the demise of the intellectual and even spiritual being of humanity. So, that's why we need to share this stuff around, and why we're blocked continually. If I don't put something out in a week, I lose 20 subscribers, and it's not because people unsubscribe. Everyone writes me and says, hey man, I was unsubscribed, some of them a dozen times. So it's very important that people share the information, let alone you guys need to subscribe and like this, because if you don't, it won't work in the YouTube algorithm. And then for 2, not just that no one will see it, but if it's not shared, all they're going to do is scrub subscribers and basically prevent views, prevent people from knowing what's coming up next time. So it's very important you guys share this, as long as make sure you're still subscribed. And like everyone says, hit the notification bell. It doesn't matter. Little bell icon, smack that, because if you don't, even being subscribed, I don't even know what it means, because if you don't use the bell icon, then it doesn't notify you anyway. So you have to use that too. So appreciate it. I'm going to look here. some a little more. Okay, so yeah, William. Yes, William. Yep, William Cooper, Bill Cooper. So, dude says, what about the fallen ones? The 12 gods that all fell from heaven contribute. Well, there was 200 fallen angels. So, if you want to kind of go that route, and they're said to still exist in demonic form because their spirits are trapped here. So, they eventually succumb to whatever, or lock down in whichever realm. Could just be a time realm that's outside of ours and not relative to us, and be stuck there. I think it's all absolutely all connected. These beings themselves, no, because this is an entire race, and they're a race of, whether they're ultra terrestrial or extraterrestrial, it's hard to tell, and who's seated where, so. Oh, what that really irks you, Todd? Which part really irks you, actually? Being that they're unsubscribing and things like that. Yeah, and the whole contributing to the gene pool. See, this stuff was going on when it says, this is interesting, because when it talks about, even in the Bible, when it says the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men, found them fair, and took them as wives, and they bore children. These children were the Nephilim, and were of giant stature. It doesn't mean that they were all the giants, by the way. There's giants in the Bible that are not the Nephilim. Lots of them, and big ones, a lot bigger than the Nephilim. The Nephilim were men of renown. They weren't as big as many as the reports of the big giants. So, totally different thing, and not the Bigfoot either. The Nephilim were the sons of this intervention, and they were the men of renown, and they were men, and they weren't hairy, and they weren't gigantic, and they were very, very articulate, beautiful, fair. All their features were perfect, and blah 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 blah. But they installed man, or a law upon mankind. They enslaved everybody. They did the first laws and hyper regulation and things like that. So it's like the 3 copies of red tape and the bureaucratic shit we hate today. They're the ones who brought that upon humanity. So you got to figure, who is that, and that's kind of why they're not here now. But I'm gonna go. Oh, you're. Oh yeah, unsubscribing. Am I familiar with Gary? Which Gary? Dude. Yeah, let me know. It takes a minute here. There's some delay, but tell me which Gary you're talking about. Oh, Gary Wayne. No, I'm not. So interesting, Craig. Right on. I'll have to look into them for sure. No, well, they could say Cain was hairy, but reading and being exposed to enough of what I have been, I would have to see that defined, because I've not seen that defined. But I have seen Esau and others in the Bible were human, but covered in red hair, and lived in the forest, and brought deer to the family, and wouldn't, was not around for the blessing of God because he was deceived. So. That's interesting, Craig. I'm going to have to look into that. And, the same thing with the story of the Anunnaki and the Nephilim and all that's regarded outside the Bible in the Babylonian and Sumerian stuff like that. So in those texts, they talk about Enkidu, so you had a character there in that saga as well that Marduk or whatever, had to go up against Enkidu, and they were both big. And they got together and went and did all kinds of forays and different things. So when we look at those things, there is definite room for that to exist, and it kind of all goes together. I mean, there's a story that's real, and it can have similarities to early stories, because sometimes this whole thing is like a repetitive epic, almost like a sequel. Where we keep getting a point in humanity, and we have characters that represent the same people and things like that. There's also many, many renditions. This is so old that it's been retold and even reinitialized many, many times. So, okay, but with that, you guys, Yeah, Gilgamesh versus Enkidu. Oh, yeah, Gilgamesh. I'm sorry. I said Marduk. It was Gilgamesh. That's right. I'm sorry about that. Thank you for correcting me, Prince Solomon. Next video, I can share a link to his channel discussing Bigfoot as part of the natural progression. We are ones descended from alien life forms, escaped from Mars. Yeah, I know. That's a really unique. I used to say that kind of, that Bigfoots were just the wilder form of human, because in a sense, I mean, there's a logic to it. Only not maybe genetically, I'm not sure, but if you look at wolves and jackals and things like that, so there's not, there's no natural form of basset hound or animals like that. So they came from the wolf or jackal line. And foxes are interesting animals, if you just put a wild fox with people, and in little as 4 generations, they can be a little domestic dog that's black and white and spotted. Just 4 generations. They will not do it unless they're domesticated and bred with people. And so you end up with, by doing that from wolves and jackal lines, you end up with all the domestic dog breeds. By humans interfecting with the lupus or arius, or lobos or arius, by humans interacting and breeding them for specific traits is where we get all the dogs. Well, it almost seems like the wolf, the wild form, is perfectly made for the environment. Far different from a normal dog, actually, anatomically, if you look. The dew claws and the extra teeth, and there's a lot of, and the scent gland, there's a lot of things that wolves have that dogs don't have, and it's that reason. They're out there in the world, and they lose that quickly. Well, if we are not out there in the world genetically, do we lose that quickly? Are we the domestic dog versus them, the wolf? Which is, and it can still, they're far different. They're very different animals. Matter of fact, one can eat stuff that the other kill the other one. But yet they can breed. You can still breed them, and they could pretty have some wild outcomes because they're not that close anymore. So yeah, I hope you get a notification too, Todd. If not, just keep checking back with us. It's great to have you here live. Dude. Yeah. Got you itching to get out there and backpack? Well, do it, man. Just keep your head on a swivel. There's a lot of weird shit out there. So, okay. Well, great, man. Appreciate you guys. And thank you for everything. It's been awesome. It's been really super, super awesome. I had a lot of good input. I love to have it. Yeah, and I don't know, Pygmy Poacher, I'm not sure about that with Melba, but she's becoming more public, so it's probably going to be on the scene soon. I know she's doing some podcasts and things. And then would it impact my current assessment? No, not really. I mean, because there's a lot more going on here than we'd ever realize. So we could be looking at creatures that were produced for disinformation, that there's a real creature running around that could have been made by, everything we see, we're years and years and years behind, and we have technology we can see that we can start to design animals. They've been doing this forever. So who knows who's got in and created what to bring one reality or another forward, or to hide one reality or another. So it's too difficult to say at this time. Yeah, Social Squatcher, I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. A Bigfoot's perfectly meant for this world. They step the right height for what natural terrain, how it breaks and how it goes, and tree sizes, tree falls, all that stuff. They're the right size. They can deal with all that and fluid travel over that stuff, and we're no good at it. That's for sure. Did I see the Greer conference? Yeah, I did. And then I also have been watching, more importantly, I believe right now, I'm watching the congressional hearings where they're coming out in there, which is really, really good. Of course, that's what I'm saying. So the information we're presenting here is part of the story, but it's an actual more authentic part of the story than what you're going to hear derived right now, because this is the end sum of what the groups, the MJ12 groups and them, wanted to put out to you. The other side is the guys who are aware of that, who are trying to tell you what they're going to put out to you. So, okay. But anyway, you guys, I'm going to wrap this. I got a lot to do. And I appreciate everyone showing up. Hit us up on Patreon if you can and help out. We're real small, but more importantly, share us to social sites. Share us, please, somehow. Don't just think, oh, well, the guy next to me is going to share me. Just do it. It takes like 10 seconds. but it makes a huge difference. Without that, anything we show is never going to get out there, and that's why I'm doing it. And then if not, if we don't get big enough exposure, then someone else with a larger exposure is going to pop up and try to interpret all this and dispel it before more people see it. So, yeah. Yeah, I saw that World Bigfoot Radio. Yeah, that they were, I was kind of mentioned on there. That's Duke's a good buddy of mine. I need to call him actually. So Duke, if you watch this, sorry I haven't called you. Don't take it personal. I've been working my ass off, dude. So I just decided to jump on here and knock it out. That's why it's all informal and I don't care today. Make another run up to the nest. Yeah, that's gonna happen eventually. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but we're gonna pull it off. I'm gonna go July 28th, 29th. I'll be speaking at the Moon Lake Gathering in Altamont, Utah, at Moon Lake at the park there. So you can search that and get that information. It's all over the place. I'll try to put a link to something maybe. When I'm up there, I'm going to actually be discussing Bigfoot, aliens, treasure, and how this is interconnected. And this kind of is a prequel to that in a way. You know, so why everything was kind of happening and who's doing what, and especially in North America and Southwest U.S. So, but anyway, okay, you guys, appreciate it. It's been awesome. Hate to run, actually. I'd just stay here if I didn't have stuff to do. Yeah, Moon Lake, bro. Moon Lake Gathering is what it's called. You have to just do a Google search on it. 27 years. Yeah, it's near there. It's near the Utah Mountains, yeah. So, but, yeah, just do a quick Google search, Moon Lake Gathering, Altamont, Utah. Yeah, yep. Uinta Mountains. Yeah, just do a quick Google search on there, and that'll get you there. Or you can track me down on Facebook, and I can get you the information there. So, yep, it's all interconnected, bro. Perfectly. All right, you guys. Again, thank you. Hang out forever, but I'm out of here. Appreciate everything. It's been great, man. It's been more than great. So, I'll see you guys all next time.